Is Will Rogers getting the respect he deserves?
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports' Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the days. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Lars, we got a really fun show coming at the Everydayers today. We're going to be breaking down some of these really exciting matchups. We're going to be talking about the Washington receivers versus this Rutgers secondary, which has been really good so far this season. We're going to be talking about Rutgers' biggest advantage over Washington, which is a really good offensive line and two excellent running backs. But you and I were having this conversation before the show. Is Will Rogers getting the respect he deserves this season? Because he has been, it feels like very quietly, the top 5, top 10 quarterback in the country.
Yeah, I think he certainly has played up to the par. And I think the reason why I kind of brought up the idea he doesn't get enough credit is when you just think about where Washington's at right now and how honestly bad it could be, given, how the offensive line is played, some of the questionable play calling decisions that have been made. Will has done a beyond fabulous job of doing what was asked of him, and honestly, even a little bit more. I know this narrative is out there that Will's not a mobile quarterback. And I'm not saying he's Michael Vick or Damon Williams. I'm not here to, profess that he's Johnny Manziel and able to be a true dual threat quarterback. But I do want to take people back to that first bobbled snap against Northwestern, where Will could have easily, just taken it, caught it, fallen on it, done whatever you want to do, and just taken a 3-yard loss. No. Immediately looks around in 1.5 seconds, assesses, crap, you know what? Play's dead. I'm just going to go forward and run. And gains 12 yards. Those are the plays. Now, you can say, well, he's had the bobbled snap and he fell on it. Well, here's the thing. All of those are on either the snap or the actual exchange. It's not on Will. And then when you look at, the touchdown to Denzel that went to the moon before it came into Denzel's hands, like everything, Will has not. Okay, here's the stat for you that I brought up to you before the show. Of the 3 quarterbacks that rank in that highest completion percentage, Dillon Gabriel at Oregon at number 1 at 84%, Jackson Dart at Ole Miss with 79.8, and Will Rogers at 3 with 75.7. Of those 3, only Dillon Gabriel and Will Rogers have not thrown an interception. Between Dillon Gabriel and Will Rogers has 2 more touchdowns and over 200 more passing yards. In an offense that really, as I will keep beating this thing into a dead horse, does not use 3 and 4 receiver sets that often. Like they do, but really in comparison to how much you would expect and how much Will can thrive with a 3 and 4 receiver set, like if the play calling were a little bit better and the play, availability was a little bit more and you had those options, I think Will would even have more yards than he does already, which would then get him into that top 5 discussion and have a little bit more awareness paid to him.
So I really like where you're going with this because look, this is something you and I talked about all offseason long, where Will was the perfect guy to come take over for Michael Penix, where there were always, it's seemingly unfair expectations placed upon him through no fault of his own because of what Mike did, because of how good Mike was for 2 seasons. And even though Lars, as you said, Will is, top 3 in completion percentage, he hasn't thrown an interception and he's been really, really good with the ball. Like, there's still certainly ways that he can improve, but he has been excellent all season long. He has been exactly what this offense has needed. The numbers don't jump off the page, but this has been a really down year for quarterbacks all across the country. And that's why it's okay to have this conversation. That's why it feels right to have this conversation because, we're not saying, Will should be in New York for the Heisman. We're not saying that's the level that he's played at this season. But he's done more than enough for this offense. He has been really, really solid in each and every game. And even beyond that, where, as you said, that touchdown pass to Denzel Boston was fantastic. The one to Giles Jackson early on in the Apple Cup, unbelievable, where he's had some really, really nice throws. And as you continue to see him, I think we're going to see him take more downfield shots as the season goes along. It really is going to open up and we're going to see Will just really shine.
Exactly. And I think, it could, and I think that's where it gets back into play calling and the offensive line. And once the offensive line gets more in cohesion and you feel more comfortable about calling some 3 and 4 receiver sets to take those deep shots, then yeah, that'll come. But it also just gets back to that's why you have the veteran presence of Will, to where you're not worried if, oh crap, the offense is stalling out for a couple of drives here and there because of penalties or whatever. None of the penalties are on Will. None of all the problems don't start with Will. Now, could he get better? Sure. Again, I'm not saying he's perfect. He's not going to New York, but for what the situation requires, he's been more than adequate. The thing is, I kind of wonder, and this is something I wanted to ask Jedd, and I honestly forgot. Should have done it. We'll do it next week. Maybe we'll see what it looks like against Rutgers, and then I'll reassess. How much autonomy does Will have in this offense? Because one thing that I know Jedd said, that he brought up back when he was with the Jacksonville Jaguars, when he said that Blake Bortles audibled out of a play, or changed the play or whatever, and Jedd was like, Blake, what are you doing? We don't do that here. You don't change my play. And I'm like, that to me is a little bit concerning if nobody can correct the coach. Now, I'm not saying the quarterback should ever correct the coach, but I think of anybody, a fifth-year quarterback who's played in several offenses with Michael Leach, and now you're coming out here to Jedd's pro. I feel like Will would have the autonomy to at least get a couple of options. Same thing with Michael Penix last year, where, again, I know people are going to hate it, but you go back to the 4th and whatever call that was that Rome took for 20 plus. That was an option that Mike had.
But
I know it's different. I know it's different, but I'm saying there's how much autonomy can Will have? Does Will have the ability to say, hey, I think we should do this instead of this, or throw me another option? Because that'll take Will to another level.
So I agree with you, but there's two different things. Because what you're referencing is a post-snap read. That's something where, the end is staying here. I'm gonna hand this ball off to Rome instead. Where I thought you were gonna go back to 4th and goal at the Apple Cup, where it's, oh no, I didn't have the ability to check out of that play. Where that's different. That's where I would have, because, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say that's what I was kind of trying to tie together was you have, but you're going into that play last year saying, hey, you have options based on what you see post snap. My point is there was 0.0 chance of anything other than the speed option being run the second they broke the huddle. And that's the problem to your point.
Yeah, but you're right. But I just don't think that that's necessarily the best example in that case from just looking at it, where when I look at that, yeah, for sure. There should have been a different play call where, why not when Jedd talked about, we originally had a play called for Giles, where that's what you kind of look for in that case where, let me audible into this passing play. Let me check out the run into this, where I think those are two different things. And you're right. I don't think that's something we've seen a ton of out of Will, where I don't know if that's something where, the helmet comms have come into play at all, where it's, oh yeah, we're going to call 2 plays in the huddle or this kind of thing. Or it really is just one play call where it's not the old Sean McVay, get to the line early, read the defense, and maybe I'll help you change the play sort of thing. But the more I look at Will, you're right. None of that seems to be on him, but with those stipulations, honestly, I feel like that does nothing but add to the point here. That with these things that I don't want to say have hamstrung him, but these things that have limited what he might be able to show, like in terms of going to the NFL and his intelligence, some of these different things, he's done nothing short of a spectacular job. There are things that need to be corrected. He's not necessarily getting the ball out on time on every single play, but those are things to be corrected. That's why he's 20th in the country in passing yards and not necessarily in the top 10, where there are certainly ways that things that still need to be adjusted. But Lars, it's exactly as you said. We need to make sure that Will Rogers is getting the respect he deserves. And we also need to pay a lot of respect to this Rutgers rushing attack because it is excellent. Right after a message from our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. We got a fun Thursday night football game coming up tonight. I was having a lot of trouble with this one as a Patriots fan. There's nothing that gives me more pleasure than watching both of these teams lose. Right now, I'd probably take Cowboys money line, but I'm looking at some of these props over here, and I'd take the Malik Neighbors alternate receiving yards. I'd give him over 80 yards. I'd put him as an anytime touchdown scorer as well. That guy has just been playing out of his mind so far this year. He's an extremely talented receiver, and you need to check out all those odds over on FanDuel. So, Lars, this Rutgers rushing attack is something. You and I have mentioned Kyle Monangai at multiple points this week. Pro Football Focus also put out a little graphic earlier highlighting that Rutgers has the highest graded offensive lineman among Power 4 offensive linemen at every single position so far this season through the first 4 games. That seems to help Kyle Monangai a little bit, and this certainly is an advantage where Washington's defense has been excellent. Washington's defense is 11th in total yards allowed and in scoring defense as well. So they've been really, really good. But when I look at this, I say, yeah, they still are really going to have their work cut out for them, especially on a short week.
Yeah, it feeds into what we said yesterday when it was like, hey, you're 8 for 8 on offensive linemen compared to, Rutgers versus Washington in this game. That's terrifying. Like, just speaks to a few different problems. But in a way, when you look at Washington's defense, who better than Sebastian Valdez, Zach Durfee,
Sure.
Getting him back, and Carson coming up the middle of support, Zoe coming up in the middle of support. Boy, here's the other thing. It speaks to kind of the other side of this equation. Washington, compared to, I know this isn't about the offensive line, but it's comparing how do you attack that front, especially Rutgers' run game. Washington's 2 highest pressure guys, Roy and Zoe, combined for 22.
Yeah.
Rutgers, first 2 highest are 8. So you have the horses on defense to attack this line. My curiosity is going to be, are we going to see some 5-man fronts? Are you going to go 4-on-5 and bring some guys off the edge? Because but here's the thing. This is a perfect Steve Belichick. I mean, and by the way, this is Steve Belichick's game. Like we'll talk about that more on the Friday show, but this is a Steve Belichick ready to shine kind of performance, especially going against the people going against the mentor, as it were. And I think Steve is going to say, hey, you know what? You have a really good offensive line. We got some dudes over here too. And I think you look at Javon Parker, you look at Sebastian Valdez, got to throw in Jacob Bandits there on some level. But then you look at so many other guys that can find pressure to the ball and contain guys. It's absolutely, like you said, it's a very big task for Washington, but it's not one that it's like, Washington's going to get abused here. Now, could they? They kind of did against Wazoo, so it's certainly in the cards. But I think there's a little more, now that you got that loss out of the way, I think there's a different edge about this team, especially now that you're in conference. Like, hey, defense travels. Run game usually is kind of going to be the thing that works with an offense doesn't have a great quarterback. Washington has the horses to do it. So I'm just really curious to see how many of those horses end up getting to play.
So, but I feel this plays into something that you and I have talked about for a good majority of the games so far this season, where the quarterback play hasn't necessarily been overwhelming. And that's one of those things where, when you talk about it, yeah, I do think we see some more 5-man fronts where Alfonso Tuputalo will walk down and play that edge rusher outside linebacker spot again, where we'll see 4 and 5 defensive linemen on the field. Because as you said, Lars, this is a perfect game for Steve Belichick to say, hey, we dare you to throw the ball. We want to take away your strength. We're going to do everything we can to stop the run. It's not going to be easy, but we are going to sell out to do it with 7, 8 guys in the box on every single play. And, when you look at this, this is the thing where we've always talked about it, and this is something that I just watched for a long time, watching a Belichick defense. It wants to take away your biggest strength. And Rutgers, far and away, it's their biggest strength. They are a top 10 offense in the nation in terms of yards per game running the ball. They have picked up 767 yards on the ground this season. They are a really, really good rushing offense. You have to stop it. And this offense, I'm talking to our guy Alex Katzen about this a little bit. Their offense isn't necessarily overly complex, where it's not a super deep playbook, and it's kind of the Herman Boone, remember the Titans thing, it's like Novocaine, give it time, always works. Where it has, you can't knock it because it has. So I think Steve is going to have a solid game plan for this, but it's not always about the X's and O's, and it's about the Jimmys and Joes in this case. I hate using that term. I really do. But that's the best way to describe this, because you need to make sure that you can out-physical them. And doing that in their building on a short week is not going to be an easy thing.
No, but they've also got a ton of practice of doing it every single day against Jonah Coleman. And I'm not saying Jonah and Kyle are 1A, 1B in that regard, but and it's as I mentioned to you before the show, when Jedd said at his Wednesday press conference, usually Thursdays, today it's Wednesday because of the short week, that Rutgers has the best, running back duo in the country with Kyle Monangai, and I can't think off the top of their head who is a good back. And Steve said it as well, Carson said as well. Okay, they got two good backs, two really good backs. And as you said, I love the gamesmanship from Jedd, but that's just
Ohio State exists. No, I'm sorry. Please continue. Ohio State exists.
But the reason why, why I bring that up is to say, well, the key also with Kyle Monangai is his yards after contact, similar with Jonah, where these are two guys. And again, actually, Jonah ranks higher in yards after contact than Monangai coming into this game. But that's another side of the equation where we've seen Washington defenses in the past where, okay, can you make the first stop? Maybe, maybe not. Can you slow them down? But then if you don't have anybody in that second and third level, which, in a way kind of touches back to what I was saying in the show yesterday, it's like, hey, that's great. But you need those guys on the back end. Like, hey, what was it, 2021 that Asa Turner was always making tackles like 30 yards, 40 yards down the field because there was nobody else there to make a play. And it was that kind of situation where you don't want to have Kyle, getting, if Monangai runs for, let's say 95 plus total in the game, you probably take that. But at the same point, if he runs for 170 and 120 of those are yards after contact, that's a problem. And so when you get Carson back and you get, I don't know if McKell will be back, but you got Cam back.
Jedd said he's probably not going to play. Yeah.
Probably not, right? I love the probably. It's like a questionable probably. Just keep it a buck. Just keep it a buck. But yeah, and if you don't have McCall, but you still have Cam, and so you have enough horses back there to make it work. Elijah has clearly shown he can track dudes down, so if he gets to play on defense, I would bet on him to make a play. But that's the other side of this equation. Is it's not just the front; it's making sure the entire defense plays as a unit, which I think we've seen them do pretty consistently. Throughout the season. The only game and time which you say that might not happen is about a 5 or 7 minute stretch in week 3. But probably it. That's probably it.
And that's the thing. It's still not a long stretch. But I'm looking at the numbers here, where Rutgers has Samuel Brown is also really talented, and Antoine Raymond, their freshman, has gotten in a little bit where Brown and Raymond have a similar number of carries, but they really do lean super heavily on Monangai. That's the thing where it's worked so well for them. Why are you going to change it is the big thing. But just the more I look at this, the more curious I am as to what the game plan is going to be. Where, one thing I was really curious about, and obviously it worked very well, where it speaks to the game planning that Steve Belichick and this whole coaching staff has done. Where, I remember watching the Northwestern game during that goal line stand. I watched them take off Logan Sagapolu and Jacob Bandis before, I think it was the first down play. I was like, oh, it's first and goal on the 2. You're taking off your big guys. And they went with 3 straight passes. I think it was 4 straight passes, where I was like, oh, okay. Well, that's just how good of a scouting job you guys have done, where the personnel, all that sort of thing. And I just want to see how that personnel game is going to play out this week, because you talk about Voit Tanufi. I don't know how much we're going to see him this week. And I don't mean that as a slight to him, where he's been excellent, but I think we should see more Deshaun Lynch than Voit, where to get that big body in there who can also be disruptive and also get after the quarterback, but is a little bit more solid in terms of a guy you can play on the edge to help set that edge against the run. And you can complement him with Sebastian Valdez, with Jacob Bandis, Logan Sagapolu, or, whoever else you want to throw in there, maybe a little bit more Linnaeus Davis, where all of those guys you can throw into the rotation. And it's just really, it's going to come down to just getting Kyle Monangai on the ground. Where is it going to be Carson Bruner? Is it going to be Alfonso Tupatala? Where I'm sure we'll get to that on the Friday show, where we'll have some bold predictions on tackles as we love here on this show. But I look at that and I just say that's the biggest thing, is this offensive line is going to get a push at times, but Washington's defensive line has been really solid, and you can't count them out, where I would give Rutgers the advantage in that case right now, but it's a lot closer than I think some people are giving it credit for.
Exactly. That's the key here, where you're no doubt saying, look, you're going into it as an underdog. It's only a 2.5 point underdog. That's you're not outmatched completely. You're look not down upon, but it's like it's not favorable, but you have the guys to do it. It's just a matter of can you win your one-on-ones, and that's the hallmark of a Belichick defense. You have to win one-on-one up front. And you got the guys to do it. Valdez, Parker, show you're ready to play Big Ten ball.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. This is one of the things I'm really excited about in terms of this game. Is it is going to be a somewhat old school Big Ten matchup where a lot of running the ball on both sides, really. And it's going to come down to who is going to defend the run better. And the numbers so far say that's Washington, but it's not about the numbers. It's about playing the game on the field, where you could say the exact same thing in a conversation between Washington's receiver and this Rutgers secondary. Right after a message from our good friends over at Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. They got some awesome deals going on right now, like one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hits, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks is so much fun. I had so much fun putting a lot of Celtics in my lineup. You know, when I was hanging around in Texas for the national championship, doing all that sort of stuff, it was a lot of fun. You should download the Prize Picks apps today and use code LOCKDOWNCollege and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKDOWNCollege on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. So, Lars, this matchup in the secondary, we just talked about what it looks like on paper in the front seven. On the back end, let's flip the script here a little bit. UW offense, Rutgers defense. It's very, very interesting. And I don't know, man. I want to give an edge to Washington, where it feels like some of these early games Rutgers have played, the emphasis has been on attacking their ground game. They're just attacking that front seven. And I think with this trio of receivers that Washington has, they can find some holes in the secondary.
Yeah, well, I mean, the ironic part in this is actually the pass defenses are relatively close. But, you know, it's funny when you said you give the slight edge to Washington. Yeah, I'll give you some stats to back that up. Lowest completion percentage in the Big Ten. Washington at 43.3. Rutgers at third at 51.2. Yards per game. Washington 5 at 131.3, Rutgers at 6 at 134.7. So they're both evenly matched, but you take Washington's experience and you look at the other side of that equation. Well, who are Rutgers receivers? And it was kind of what did I tell you last week going in there against Northwestern? And I'm like, I'm not necessarily worried about Rutgers or Northwestern's receivers. And yeah, I feel the same way. I'm looking through the numbers right now. And yeah, again, like, you know, Isaiah Strong, decent, but no touchdowns. You're looking through it. Now, they got a guy, you know, the senior, Demir Miller is the top 10, but guess who's right above him and has 4 more receiving touchdowns? Denzel Boston.
Right.
So, you know, it's when you're talking, okay, well, so and that's why you get back to the quarterback play of like, okay, well, if you're able to shut Rutgers' run game down, or they try and, you know, say, hey, we're going to take the bait and we'll try and go one-on-one outside. Well, first of all, I'm trusting Ephesians, Prysock, Thad Dixon, Cam on the back end more so than I am Rutgers receivers. And that's no disrespect to those kids over there, but it's in a way the same way I felt about Northwestern. I'm like, I mean, I wasn't expecting that many egregious drops. Like, geez, that was incredible.
So, Lars, you make a lot of great points here because I looked at this on the other side of the coin, where it's Denzel Boston, Giles Jackson, Jeremiah Hunter against their secondary. I love all the points you made. I looked at this the other way around because, you know, when you're talking about Rutgers secondary and how close those numbers are, I like that. Where I look at this and I say Washington's 5th in the Big Ten right now with 291.8 passing yards per game. You flip that over the passing defense, the Huskies are also 5th in, in secondary play, like you said, allowing 131.3. And again, as you said, Rutgers is 6th at 134.7. That's the matchup I'm really going to be watching because, you know, we just talked about the old school, the Big Ten football, the run the ball, control the clock, all that sort of stuff. But if Washington is able to do that, it's going to put them in a really good position to run some play action, which is something we've seen them do a lot more after the first couple of weeks of the year. And I think that, you know, a lot of that stems off of what we said yesterday and Jonah Coleman and all that sort of stuff. But when we look at this, I just think that Rutgers hasn't necessarily seen a passing offense like Washington's just yet, just like you can say about Washington with Rutgers' rushing attack. So I'm going to be watching that really, really closely.
Yeah, I mean, on the receiver side of things, there's only 2 teams in the Big Ten that can say they have 2 of the top. There's 2 receivers in the top 10.
Yeah,
Washington and Ohio State.
Right,
that's it. And here's the thing that blows my mind, and I think I mentioned it to Alex at the press conference on Wednesday. Giles came into that last game 24 for 24. He left that game 1 for 3. Yeah, right. Because he had 27. So it's like, okay, you have that guy there, most dependable receiver in the country at this point still. And so to me, and then you go look at Denzel with 5 touchdown catches already through 4 games. I don't know off the top of my head what the record is for a single season for receivers and touchdowns, but at this pace, Denzel and Will might unlock that. And I think that's why we wanted to lead the show with Will, saying, hey, once this offense gets a little more in sync, and I think that's kind of what we're looking for, is to get in sync because they're right there. Those 2 might just take off. But then you still have Giles as the relief valve. Then you still have Jeremiah Hunter, it may or may not be a witness protection every other week. And so to me, it's if you can find that third guy, if you can open up that offense a little bit like that, it just blows my mind how Jeremiah Hunter does not get. I don't know what to say. I have a lot of words. It's not like he's not getting open.
Right. And that's the thing where I look at him, and we're saying it every week at this point, and it's going to have to come true at some point where he's getting open every week, and against a secondary like Rutgers, which has been really stingy. It feels like this is the kind of week where you can exploit him. If you want to rotate coverage towards Denzel after the game he had last week, you're going to have opportunities to get him the ball. And we know Will can do that, where it's just kind of, when are we going to see it more frequently? Where we saw Giles get so many targets, especially in the Apple Cup. It's all right. Coming into Northwestern, we saw him get a couple more. It was nice to see him get involved early on, but let's see it more often, because all it does is open up this offense even more. And I think against a secondary like Rutgers, which, just like people are going to say about Washington's, is somewhat untested at this point in terms of talent, where, the game against Virginia Tech was a really fun one, but it feels like it's on the same level. So it's all right. Here you go. It's the biggest test of the year for both sides. Who's going to prevail?
Yeah, and I mean, I think, and that's why this game is so close in terms of how the perception is going into it. I know I've said the spread, 2.5 on FanDuel, shout out.
Yep.
And so to me, yeah, it's an evenly matched. Rutgers is not insurmountably better than Washington, and Washington is not insurmountably better than Rutgers. This is a good measuring test game. And by the way, I think Rutgers is 2-1, right? Because they've only played 3 games, which I'm still trying to figure. 3-0. I'm still trying to figure out how they've only played 3 and Washington played 4. Anyways, beside the point. You're looking at it and saying, okay, well, you're basically, if you take out the Apple Cup, you're 3-0. You're both 3-0 going into this. So you're both evenly matched. And this is a game where I know we both feel a little bit differently, which we'll get more to on Friday. But this is a game where it doesn't matter if you end up having to go to Jonah or you have to win it on the arm of Will. You can do both. Now, maybe the problem lies in trying to pick one. I don't think you have to pick one. You just have to find a rhythm. And that is the key here. And I think the receivers haven't, I heard this on, I think Puck the Huskies podcast with Jason Puckley and Jordan Refford, where it's like you have the deep shot guys. You have Denzel. You can take the deep shots, but how much mesh did we see during fall camp and spring ball that we have not seen in games at all?
Well, we've seen some of it. It's just not in sync. It's not in rhythm the same way that it was, which is interesting.
But that's what I'm saying. It's the combination of the volume that we've seen of it and the rhythm of it. It hasn't clicked yet, but that's what I think we're kind of hitting at this whole piece about this today's podcast about the episode. The offense is there. It's not like a perfectly smooth ball, but you got most of the formation there. This is the perfect game against Rutgers for Max McCree to start at left tackle and say, you know what, I'm going to own this. Because I know Max has the mentality of doing it, and I know he's got the fire to do it. Didn't show it on the first couple of plays against Northwestern, but he did better at the end of the game. can the offensive line win a Big Ten Rutgers game? Win a Big Ten game. I'm not saying you didn't last week because Northwestern's good, but let's be real here. You're getting a better test this week on the road, and so this is a true measuring stick game. But I think that's the message to Washington. Like it's all right there for you, which again does come down to coaching, which could be a little terrifying.
Right. But that's the biggest thing with all this. It's what are you going to choose to, or how are you going to choose to attack this? And I want to go back to, what I was talking about with the play action, because that's the thing where, Rutgers is 90th in the nation right now in rushing yards allowed. And if you're able to establish that, I want to see a lot of play action because it'll work. And you can take advantage of the secondary, and you can utilize Denzel and Jeremiah and Giles and Decker DeGraff and Kaleki Latu and whoever else you want to throw out there in the passing attack, because they're going to have to sell out to stop the run at some point. And that's why Jonah can become so important in this game. And there's so many just little things that are all going to come down to the coaching staff. And offensively, more so than defensively, how are you going to attack this defense? Because it's solid, it's well coached, and it should be ready for you. Now just show up. Like, that's the thing. I was going to say, show that you're ready for it, but it comes down to just showing up. Just show up and show, everything that happened in the Apple Cup, that's behind us now. Just prove that. And Lars, I think that's the best place for us to get out of here. As always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you all everydayers for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. And thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Now, just a reminder, make sure you go check out our Locked On Huskies Insider program. The link to that is down in the description below. You get a 2-week free trial. And after that, it's $4.99 a month. We're dropping recruiting rumors, text messages, all that sort of stuff on game day. Whatever else, all throughout the week. If you have any questions and comments, you can always hit us up about anything that's going on in and around the program. We're always happy to answer that. And, it's as easy, like I said, of just going into your text message inbox. So it's super simple. And just a reminder, make sure you subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter as well. We're on all those platforms, delivering so much fun stuff for you. But as always, the best stuff is always going to be here on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Again, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating the channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click the little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comments section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Friday.